Oh, hello, good morning. It's 9:59. I'm really excited to be talking to everybody today. How's it going? I'm gonna look for my friend here to invite her to come hang out with me. Sheila. This is gonna be an exciting, I think it's gonna be really exciting. You guys, like many people in the country right now. Hi!
Hi, how are you?
Great. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay,
Oh my
great.
goodness.
Can you
Thank
hear me and everything?
I can hear you
Okay,
fine. Thank you so
perfect.
much for talking to me. I was just telling everybody, so, I think I want to shout out our friend Liz Kakowski, who really raised her hand and said, I have a bunch of questions about the vaccine, and we're all mom friends, and you were kind enough to do a Zoom for me and a bunch of other friends of ours, just sort of explaining
Yeah,
some basics about the COVID vaccine, the coronavirus vaccine. And I thought it was really helpful. And honestly, I just wanted to share it with more people because I thought what you said was really common sense. You had some really great answers. And I think a lot of people don't know what's going on. I don't know. There's a
great.
lot going on in the world.
Oh my
And
gosh,
I really,
of
I'd
course.
like to check this off people's lists of things to be worried about. Do you know what I mean?
We know what it is. We know what's in it. We know it's safe. Move
Okay,
on.
see,
There's
these
two,
these
yeah.
are like some great. Already, I'm feeling like a little less anxious already. So let me just introduce you. So, Dr. Varsan is a board certified. You're a board certified hematologist and oncologist, right? You specialize
Yes,
in blood disorders and
yes,
oncology,
yeah.
treating cancers,
Hmm.
and you were a graduate of the USC Keck School of Medicine, and you practice in Los Angeles. So
Yeah.
she's like legit. She knows. You're not talking to me about the vaccine, okay? I don't know anything. I'm introducing you to a doctor who knows things, okay? Okay,
So,
so Sheila,
yeah,
let's just jump in. Let's just
let's
run
just jump
down,
in. Perfect.
talk about the basics of the COVID vaccine.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth, for having me here. First of all, I'm so excited to share this news and just educate people on this vaccine. So, briefly, I'm going to focus this talk really on the mechanisms of the vaccine and on the vaccines that have the FDA authorization in the United States, since that's what's currently been authorized. So there's two companies thus far in the that have FDA authorized vaccines for use, emergency use authorization in the United States. Those are the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine. These are what are called mRNA vaccines. Now, to get into the mechanism of what is an mRNA vaccine, I think it's important to go into what is COVID? What is a COVID vaccine? Because that's how they were able to make these vaccines. So I have some handy dandy drawings here that I'd love to share
I
with
love
all
it.
of
I love a
you.
hand drawing. Look at this. Great.
Hand
See?
drawing.
Super easy.
Okay. So it's called the SARS-CoV-2 virus. This is the virus that causes COVID-19 disease or the COVID-19 infection.
Okay.
This virus basically has something called an mRNA in the actual virus, and on the outside are what are called spike proteins.
Right.
So
That's the
now,
picture that we've all seen with like the red spikes all over it, right? It looks like, yeah.
yes, exactly. Now we move to here. Now we move to the vaccine. So how did they make this vaccine? So what they did was they basically took a piece of this mRNA, and the different companies likely took different pieces, and they
Yeah.
stuck it in this like fat bubble. This fat bubble is called polyethylene glycol. And
Okay.
when you have the mRNA in this polyethylene glycol bubble, what happens is it makes what's called these spike proteins and some of the spike proteins. So it's not making the entire virus, it's only
Right.
making the spike proteins. So you can't get a COVID-19 infection from the vaccine because you're not getting the entire virus.
Right. You're
You're
just
only
getting part of
getting
it.
correct
Part of it. So
part of it.
someone just asked in the chat, and this is a good question. What does mRNA stand for?
Yeah, okay. So messenger RNA, it won't get into too many details, but I'll say it like this. On January 10th, the
2020.
genetic code, 2020, January 10th, 2020, the genetic sequence for the COVID-19, that the COVID-19 came out. Okay, this whole thing was sequenced on January 10th. And that basically started the race to make the vaccine. This code right here, the piece of it, it's basically the message that our body uses to make proteins or the virus. So how do we make our virus? How is a virus made? It's made from this code. It's made from this code. So if I only want to make part of the virus because I don't want to sicken people with an entire virus, I just take part of the code, stick it in a bubble, and make
something else,
parts,
right?
Something else, right? Stick it in and make parts of this virus that elicit an immune response that protects me against if I were to be exposed to the actual virus itself.
Right. So any cell, so like the COVID-19 cell that, you know,
the virus
reproduces in our system, the virus that reproduces in our system, it's made up of DNA, right? You correct me. Well, what is it made up of?
Okay, so the actual virus itself is only made up of RNA. Okay. It's made up of this capsid or a viral capsid, and it's made up of these spike proteins. That's all it's made up of. The problem is, if I get this entire virus, what that virus does is it replicates its whole self in my body, and then I get this massive immune response, and that's what has led to the morbidity or all these complications from the disease, causing all these hospitalizations and deaths, because it's the virus itself is not going to kill you. What will kill you is the immune response to the vaccine. I'm sorry, the immune response to the virus.
So I found this really interesting. You said this the other day too, that the actual virus, it just needs a place to live. So it just wants to come inside of our body and replicate itself a bajillion times, because that's its entire goal. It's just have more virus, right?
Yes.
Grow inside of us and use us as a host. Correct. And the thing that is making people really, really sick is our individual immune responses to the virus. So some people just get really exhausted. That's why you hear about all these different symptoms for coronavirus. Like some people lose their taste and smell, some people can't breathe, et cetera, et cetera. So it's that everybody's individual body is having an immune response or reaction to this virus that's infecting us. And it's totally new. We've never seen this virus before. It's why it's called the novel coronavirus, right?
Exactly. And that's really important. The reason why this disease, this virus is causing such havoc in humans is because humans never saw it before December of 2019. This was a virus that lived in animals, and it now is being introduced into human hosts. And because humans have never seen it, we have a massive immune response to it.
Got it.
Hence why,
And so the vaccine takes part of, not the whole coronavirus. You're not injecting COVID-19 into anybody. No. You're just giving them some NRA wrapped in a bubble of what? That bubble is
it's polyethylene glycol, which is a fat. I'll talk a little bit about what polyethylene glycol is. Polyethylene glycol is actually what you see in laxatives. If anybody's had Miralax, or if anybody has a family member or has had a colonoscopy before, it's what's used in bowel preps. It's used to clear things out of your body. So very few people have genuine reactions to that.
Got it. So it's something that humans, we've already been taking in medicines for a long time. Yes. They figured out how to basically hollow out that kind of cell and pop the mRNA of the vaccine into it.
Exactly.
And that's what you're getting injected with.
And that's what you're getting injected with. Now, something that's also, I think, important to know is people say, how did this happen so fast? And I don't believe that something this fast could happen. The truth is the technology behind mRNA vaccines has been around for years, at least since the Sars virus in 2003. And then even when Ebola came in 2013 and the MERS virus came in 2014, this mechanism, this technology of using mRNA vaccines has been around for at least over 50, almost like 10 to 15 years. But So when the genetic code came out on January 10th, it's like the tools were already there. Then we just had to put the message in there and the vaccine came out. It was actually a very, very quick process because the tools and the technology had existed, already exist.
Got it. So I love this. So let's just be clear. There was not some grand conspiracy to rush the COVID-19
No.
vaccine. The scientists who have been working on this at these companies, Moderna, Pfizer, I know Johnson & Johnson's working on one,
Mm-hmm.
AstraZeneca's working on one. So these are like professional scientists who work in vaccines for their entire lives. And basically the minute they had the genetic code for COVID-19, they were like, got it. They just started playing around with it. They put it into the technology that already existed, and then they started testing it, right?
You got it. It's exactly what it is. The technology was there. It was like play and plug almost. We got the viral genome. We have the tools to make the vaccine. Let's do it. And then recruitment also happened very quickly. We're in a pandemic. I've never lived through a pandemic. I don't think anybody watching this has. So there were so many things that were able to make this happen quickly. Recruitment happened quickly, funding happened quickly, and then the technology itself actually is quite fast. Other vaccines that we know about, the MMR or other vaccines, they actually take dead particles of the virus or live particles of the virus.
Yeah.
That process of making a virus in a lab and injecting that into a human takes a long, long time. But we're not making virus. We're just making this mRNA or the signal to make the virus. And that's a much easier process. So I actually think in the future, I think most viruses, if in vaccine development, they're going to use this technology because it's just easier and it's faster.
Got it.
So
someone asked, so I think people are confused because when you eat, a lot of people, when they get the injection, right, are getting some side effects that feel like coronavirus. So I just want to say, for me, when I get the flu vaccine, which I do get the flu vaccine, I feel a little flu-y for like the first 24 hours. Like I just, I can just tell, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And it doesn't knock me out. I can live my life, but I definitely like I feel run down. I feel a little like chesty, like the beginnings of a flu. I feel that way. So it sounds to me like getting the coronavirus vaccine does elicit what you're saying. It's just our immune response, which is what we want. That means it's working, right?
That's what you want. It's called reactogenicity. The big difference is that when the side effects that come from the vaccine are short-lived, they're usually on the order of 24 to 36 hours, whereas we know symptoms from the actual COVID-19 disease can last weeks. But it's just it's a temporary boost of the immune system, if you will, lasting 24 to 36 hours. Those symptoms of arm pain, sometimes fever, myalgias, meaning body aches, chills. I've had both my vaccines thus far. I was feeling a little down for a day to a day and a half, not going to lie, but the next day I was back, completely back. So, and I think I had a really typical reaction. So, do you want me to go into details of the trial and then?
Why not? I mean, we're here. I think
Yeah.
it's really fascinating to understand how. So basically, January 10, 2020, they get the genome. It's like a starting pistol goes off. It's like a race to get a vaccine, right?
Yeah.
So now all these scientists are working on it. Yeah, talk a little bit about, they recruited for, I know people have questions like, well, why didn't they test it on pregnant women? And why didn't they test it on kids?
Exactly.
And why didn't that? So talk a little bit about how they, how they went about getting this to market.
So very brief, I'm going to talk basically about the Pfizer trial because the Moderna trial is very similar. So just to give you basic facts about the Pfizer trial. So in the Pfizer trial, another one of my handy dandy tries, they recruited about 40,000 subjects. They gave 20,000, and these are rough numbers, but they gave around 20,000 of them the vaccine, and 20,000 did not get the vaccine. So they got something called a placebo. Mm-hmm. Now, what's important to understand is that even of the 20,000 people that got the vaccine, 8 people still developed COVID, okay?
Right.
of the 20,000 people that did not get the vaccine, 167 people got COVID. Now, when you plug those numbers in, that comes to a 95% efficacy. Or another way of saying this is that the COVID-19 vaccine has a 95% effectiveness at protecting you against COVID-19 disease or COVID-19 symptomatic infection. Now, what's important to understand is that of those 8 people that still got COVID, of the 20,000 people that got COVID with the vaccine, and the 167, of those 167, they were far sicker than the 8, and there were actually deaths in this group. In this group, there were no deaths. So even those people that did get that 5% of people that still had breakthrough infection, if you will, or still got the infection just by getting the virus, these were by and large mildly symptomatic infections. There were no deaths, as opposed to the other group that did not get the vaccine. These people were hospitalized and people passed away.
And you said something interesting the last time we talked about this. You said that the goal of the vaccine is actually just to keep, like, nobody cares if you get sick for 2 weeks and miss work and stay in bed, right? What we care about is that you never go to the hospital and you don't die. So the goal of the vaccine is to keep people from getting such bad coronavirus that they have to go to the hospital, and certainly we don't want anybody to die. So when you look at the vaccine, and we're looking at Pfizer because Moderna had very similar numbers, which we should also talk about how amazing that is. But anyway, that of the 20,000 people that got the vaccine in their study, how many did develop some COVID symptoms?
8. Of the 20,000, 8 developed COVID symptoms, as opposed to 167 that developed it with the placebo. And
meaning they didn't have any vaccine, and so they just were like us, walking around, and they got COVID.
Exactly.
Okay.
And these patients were far sicker than these patients. And it's exactly like what you said, Elizabeth. Like, this would not be a pandemic if it was an infection that just had us miss work for a week or 2. The problem is that people are going to the hospitals, and we both live in LA. Our hospitals are packed. There's no room in the hospitals for other patients that need medical care, and people are dying. So that is the main goal of a vaccine in general, is to prevent hospitalization and prevent death, meaning reduce morbidity and mortality. Those are like the scientific words.
And so in that regard, that vaccine was real successal.
Very successful. I mean, actually, I don't think they expected it to be 95% effective. In the Moderna trial, it was something like 94.6% effective. So the fact it was much more efficacious than even what the people that did the trial, I think, what they thought it would be. It actually exceeded a lot of people's expectations. And the other thing that I think that's important to know is who did they include? They didn't just include 30 and 40-year-olds like who could play tennis. They included people with, diabetes, hypertension, people with hepatitis, people with HIV. They recruited people over a large range of ages. Again, everybody in the Pfizer trial was over the age of 16. They also recruited people of all different ethnic and racial backgrounds to represent the racial and ethnic makeup of the United States. And they saw that the safety and efficacy that I just talked about it wasn't just one group. This safety and efficacy data, it was everybody basically responded and had everybody in all these groups responded and had similar safety and efficacy results. So it worked for everybody. It wasn't just like one group. It worked for everybody that was included in this trial.
Right.
So
and then, so why 16, they didn't do kids. I think you had a really interesting answer why they didn't do kids and I mean, I'm a mom, and you were like, it's human nature. Like, parents are not signing up their kids for like a vaccine trial of like something that's brand new in a global pandemic.
It's just like,
it's hard to recruit, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, anytime you're developing a new medication, the people that are generally excluded are pregnant women and children, because if you're pregnant, do you really want to try a brand new drug or a brand new
No.
medication? Probably not. You want to make sure that it's safe and efficacious in the general population before you try it on yourself. That
Right.
being said, it's so safe and so effective that the CDC currently says that if you are pregnant, you could get this vaccine. And I actually know a lot of people, including OBGYNs, that do recommend this vaccine for pregnant women. And I'll tell you why. COVID-19 can be so lethal, not only to an expectant mom, but to their fetus. You know, I work in the medical field. I have seen pregnant women in the ICU. I have seen, and I mean, it's heartbreaking. And so when you see how COVID-19 disease can affect a pregnant woman versus the vaccine, which is so safe, to me, it's a no-brainer. The
Yeah.
other thing is, if a pregnant woman were to get the vaccine, it's not only them that's going to get that immune response, their fetus is going to get that immune response. And when that baby is born, and if they breastfeed, they'll continue to get those immunoglobulins and that immunity from their mom. So guess what? That baby is almost as good as immunized, which is super cool too.
Yeah.
So again, the CDC, their wording is a pregnant woman could choose to get the vaccine if they want. I personally, and I know a lot of people definitely would say pregnant women, it would be a good idea, you know, for them to get it. In terms of children, just like you said, people aren't signing up their kids to try a vaccine that we
Right.
don't know much about. But now that we have all the safety and efficacy data, Pfizer's actually now looking at 12 and up. And those results will come out too. Even they're looking at pregnant women also. So all this data is going to start coming out also. The other
So,
thing, oh yeah.
No, you go ahead.
Oh
Keep
no, I
going.
was going to say, just like you said, I found it really interesting that two competing companies, Moderna and Pfizer, did very similar trials with the exact same scientific technology, made two different vaccines that had basically the same efficacy data and the same safety profile. These are two different companies. They didn't work together to make this data. But the fact is that because the data is so similar between the two, to me as a consumer, I have a lot of faith in the scientific technology behind the vaccine, because two different companies did the exact same thing and came up with the exact same results, or not the exact, I'm sorry. They did similar things. They came out with very, very similar results. That gives me a lot more faith in the vaccine also.
Meaning these two companies, we work in a capitalist system. They want to compete for
Yes.
our money, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to do the same. One wants to really win, right? The vaccine race here. And what you're
Yeah.
saying is the fact that they essentially came out with very, very similar data means that the science behind it was almost peer reviewed by the nature of the fact that they all did it at the same time.
Yeah, no, you said it perfectly. You said it perfectly.
So,
Exactly.
and can you speak to the conspiracy theorists who think that somehow the vaccine is like implanting a chip inside of us or something like,
Yeah, no, of course. So mRNA, when it's injected in you, doesn't last very long, to be honest. Naked mRNA lasts on the order of hours. Some people think the vaccine itself probably doesn't last more than a day or two in the body. It degrades very, very quickly. The only thing that sticks around are these, my handy dandy thing.
the little
The only
proteins?
thing that sticks
Yeah.
around are these, and then the immune response against these proteins. This degrades after a couple of days. It's gone. That vaccine itself is gone. What lasts is the,
Is
yeah.
that why right now you have to have a second shot?
You know, I don't know if that's exactly why you have to have the second shot. It could be. I mean, I think what it is what they found in the trial was to really get to 95% effectiveness, two shots were needed. That's just the way that they found that the vaccine worked the best. One shot was not able to get people to that level of immunity. They needed two shots. So, yeah, basically. One other thing I wanted to talk about, you know, just going back to side effects. This is kind of an interesting tidbit I found interesting. So the coronavirus vaccine's safety profile and its side effect profile are actually pretty similar to other vaccines that are out there that we don't even think twice about when we get. You know,
Mm.
they say 1 to 10 in a million patients that get the vaccine could have a serious reaction, landing them in the hospital. Again, there have been no deaths from the coronavirus vaccine, and these people that did have serious allergic reactions were admitted, treated, and discharged. Done. They lived and they did well. Take those same 1 million people and give them the coronavirus disease. 10,000 of them will die, because right now, coronavirus disease or coronavirus infection, we have about a 1% mortality. So if you give 1 million people the vaccine, 1 to 10 of them may end up in the hospital for a couple of days with a reaction that they do well from after a couple of days. You give those same 1 million people coronavirus disease, 10,000 of them could die, and multitudes more will end up in the hospital sick.
Yeah.
So
in other words, the vaccine's better than the coronavirus.
yes, exactly. Bottom line. And I think that that's really important to understand. The vaccine is better than getting the disease. And, you know, talking about side effects, now that I've kind of brought up side effects, who should not get the vaccine? I think that's a very fair question. There's 3 main ingredients in the vaccine. One is the mRNA.
Yeah.
One is this fat bubble, if you will, called polyethylene glycol. So that's the second ingredient. The third ingredient is salt water. So most people are not allergic to mRNA since we have it in our bodies as it is.
Yeah.
Again, there are people that are allergic to polyethylene glycol. As I mentioned, it's present in laxatives, and if you've taken it and you have an allergic reaction, you should not get the vaccine.
So, by the way, you were telling me, like, you can take some Miralax and see how you do, and you'll know if you're allergic.
Exactly. Try it out. And then the third portion of the vaccine is salt water. So most people are not allergic to salt water, but literally the CDC says if you're allergic to one of those 3 things, you should not get the vaccine. Now, let's say that you do have a history of anaphylaxis from bee stings or from shellfish or anything. Even then, the CDC recommends to get the vaccine, but they recommend to be observed for 30 minutes afterwards. That really is the guideline right now. There aren't very many people that they're saying do not get this vaccine. They're recommending it by and large for almost everybody, unless you're allergic to an ingredient in the vaccine.
Got it. And there's only those 3 ingredients currently.
Yeah.
Right. So, can you talk about too, you know, there's this new variant. So people, I think, are worried, like, well, this vaccine, what if the coronavirus changes? Will this still work? So let's talk a little bit about that.
Definitely. So let's look. So this is like the big mRNA of the virus. When there is a variant, that variant is like, we're talking, that's what this, it's a very small portion of the mRNA that's varied, I guess. that changes. For lack of a better word. Yeah, that changes. The majority of the mRNA is constant. So when you're making these vaccines, they're usually using other portions of this mRNA to make the vaccine. That's why most people believe that these vaccines will still be effective against coronavirus disease. And even Pfizer right now is doing some what they call in vitro trials, or in the lab. They're looking to see if their vaccine is effective against these new variants, and thus far they are. So there really is no concern right now that the vaccine will not be effective against these new variants.
And what about, and you were saying too, like, if COVID-19 varies so much that this vaccine doesn't work, it's no longer COVID-19. It will have literally morphed into like a totally different virus.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if this whole thing changes, it's no longer COVID-19. It's COVID-21 or 22 or 23. And then we'd make a whole new vaccine.
Right.
It won't work. And we make a new vaccine. I think one of the questions I got is, will we have to take this every year, like the flu shot?
Well, that's my next question. How long does this last?
Right, exactly. So before I answer that, I want to say a little bit about influenza or the flu. influenza is a really unique virus that changes every year. There are new strains of it every year. And that is something that's very unique to influenza. Because it changes so much every year, that is why a flu shot, almost a new vaccine for the flu, is needed every year. A new flu shot is needed every year. We don't expect that kind of change with coronavirus. Coronaviruses in general don't change. They don't mutate at the rate that influenza does. So basically, the question is, if I just got my vaccines for the coronavirus, how long are those going to last? We don't totally know, but if my immunity goes down, I may need a booster, but it's not another vaccine like every year like you would need for the flu shot. It's different. Your immunity lasts a while. I believe that this coronavirus vaccine will last a while. Maybe down the line in a few years, if my immunity wanes, I might need a booster. Hepatitis.
Yeah. What is a while, like multiple years?
I would think I would think years. I could be eating my words right now because this has only been around a couple months, but right. I'm just looking to other vaccines like hepatitis, for instance. They say hepatitis vaccines, a lot of times immunity wanes between like 5 and 7 years and people need a booster. Tetanus, for instance, is the same thing. You get a shot and the immunity wanes and 10 years later you need a booster. So I'm just kind of basing my hypothesis on other diseases and other vaccines. Usually immunity takes years to wane and you would need a booster. So
okay, what about people who had COVID, right? So they had COVID, they believe they have some immunity, some antibodies left over. Do they also need the vaccine or are they good to go?
Yeah, so anybody that has had COVID definitely should get the vaccine because we don't know how long the immunity from having the actual disease lasts. The CDC is saying it probably lasts a good 90 days, or studies have shown that it lasts at least 90 days that you're immune, I guess, to another COVID-19 infection. But that is why the CDC is recommending anybody who had a COVID-19 disease to also get the vaccine. And the only reason they're saying to wait 90 days is because there's only so much vaccine to go around. So if you have immunity for 90 days, you're good to go. Give that vaccine to somebody else who doesn't have any immunity. And then when your 90 days is up and we think that your immunity might have waned a little bit, get your COVID-19 vaccine to protect yourself. It's not because it's unsafe though. If you had COVID-19, if you're a healthcare provider and you had COVID-19 and you waited a couple of weeks after your symptoms resolved and you got the vaccine, you would be fine. You're not at increased risk for an allergic reaction to the shot or an increased risk for anything. The main reason why we say wait 90 days is just because usually people that have been infected are good to go for at least for 90 days. So
when my next question really is like why you feel everyone should get vaccinated. We've had a long talk about just sort of where we're at right now. I mean, it's like 4,000 people a day dying from COVID-19, overrun hospitals in many, many communities, many states, this up down of like what's going on. And you were saying that without vaccinations and pretty like mass vaccinations, it's going to be really hard to overcome this disease, especially in America.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, like reasons to get the COVID-19 vaccine are one, to protect yourself, just talking selfishly, protect yourself against a potentially lethal disease. It is very likely that if you get this vaccine, your chance of transmitting the disease to somebody else is less. The degree to which that transmission is lessened is not known. So is it possible for somebody who's vaccinated to carry an asymptomatic infection and pass it on to somebody who hasn't been vaccinated? It is possible. We don't know what the chances are. There is preliminary data, especially from AstraZeneca and Moderna, to say that that risk is definitely lower, but we haven't quantified it yet. But me knowing that I'm at less risk for transmitting the disease, I believe that's another reason to get the vaccine. Another reason is to get us to what's called herd immunity. We as a country need to get to herd immunity as quickly as possible. Herd immunity, Dr. Fauci had talked about 80 to 85% of the United States would need to be vaccinated to get to herd immunity. And when we get to herd immunity, we are able to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Remember, I talked about in the beginning, 5% of people that got the vaccine still got COVID-19 disease.
Right. Those eight people that still got it.
Exactly. But if we reach herd immunity, we're able to protect that 5% from getting COVID at all. And we'll also be able to protect a lot, immunocompromised patients. We didn't actually talk about that, but immunocompromised patients, they can get the vaccine, but the question is, will they mount a proper response to the vaccine because they're immunocompromised? So somebody that's immunocompromised or on chemotherapy, like my patients, they may get the vaccine, and actually have patients on chemotherapy that have gotten the vaccine because they're healthcare providers and they've done well. The question to me is, how well did it work?
Right.
So the reason why we need to get to herd immunity is not just to protect ourselves, but to protect those people that may not be able to get the vaccine or who the vaccine doesn't work on. That 5% in the trial where the vaccine did not completely work. So it's not just for us, it's to protect others. And, as we get to herd immunity, right now, children can't be vaccinated right now. The more adults and the more people that are eligible to get the vaccine, we're also protecting our children who can't get vaccinated right now. So I think those are all the main reasons. It's really not just about us. It's really about protecting society, protecting those who can't protect themselves right now.
Right. It's really important to remember, I keep going back to what you said, like everybody's response to getting the virus is different. So we've seen, it's pretty clear if you're older, you have comorbidities, which means, you have diabetes or heart disease or lung disease, whatever, you're more likely to get more sick. Yes. And what you're saying is even the people that are not as likely, and here's the other thing, it's a lottery. You don't know, right? That's the other thing.
Yeah.
You don't know. You can be 17 and get COVID and die. Like it's happening. You just don't know. It's not as likely, but you don't know. Because a lot of people, I can see in the comments, someone said like, this disease has a 95% like survival rate. Like what's the big whoopsie do? And I'm just like, oh my goodness.
I'll tell you what the big whoopsie do is. It's that when you have only, let's say it's 1% mortality. 1% mortality is nothing if like 100,000 people got this disease. 22 million people in the United States have gotten this disease. Almost 400,000 people have died. It is so prevalent that even a 1% mortality is a very, very high number.
Right.
And so I keep, going back to that, take 1 million people and vaccinate all of them, and 10 of them might have a reaction that they will live from and they will do fine from. Take those same 1 million people, give them COVID-19 disease, and 10,000 of them will die. Right. I just think that those numbers are really staggering. That's why, to me, getting the vaccine is also, it's a societal responsibility. And in the United States, I think it's our only way out of this public health crisis, economic devastation. And I firmly feel people should get vaccinated when it's available to them, not wait. Because, I really feel time is ticking. Like, we need to get to herd immunity as quickly as possible. The longer we wait, the longer we drag this out, the more hospitalizations there are going to be, the more COVID-19 surges there are going to be, the more our hospitals are going to be debilitated. We just can't live like this.
Yeah. And what about you? I do want to say too, because you said that, so say you're a nurse and you get to get vaccinated. Can you just go visit your elderly mom? Like, do you still have to wear a mask? If she's vaccinated, not vaccinated, like, tell me a little bit about hanging out with all, if your whole family gets vaccinated, it's better. Right?
Right now, if you're a healthcare provider, chances are you're the only one in your family that is vaccinated, because it just hasn't gotten to everybody else, at least in California. It might be in different states, it's different. But if you are vaccinated and you're visiting your elderly mom who's not vaccinated, you still have to wear a mask to protect her. Technically, if both of you are vaccinated, it's a much better situation, but we really cannot do away with masks or social distancing until that herd immunity is reached.
So we've got a long time right now where we still all need to be wearing masks.
Exactly. Which is why we need to vaccinate everybody as quickly as possible so we can get there. This isn't let me wait around like a year and see how everybody does. This really needs to be a movement to vaccinate large portions of people. And I know the government is working on, getting the vaccine out, but I know there's a lot of fear. But yeah, I really firmly believe that people should get it when it's available.
Yeah, I thought what you did today. So I just want to thank you. I don't want to keep everybody talking for 40 minutes about the vaccine, but I really found this conversation to be very reassuring. I thought very common sense. You're not getting the whole coronavirus in the shot. You're just getting a little part of it, so it can't replicate itself in your body. That all of us are going to have a different immune response to either COVID-19 and the vaccine. So yeah, you might feel a little sick, like you'll be fine. 99% of people are fine. If you feel a little nervous about getting the shot, or that you've had anaphylaxis or like a reaction to something, hives or, trouble breathing, whatever, to any other shots in your life, get the vaccine at your doctor's office where they can watch you for a little bit and give you what you need.
Exactly.
And then otherwise, like, encourage people in your life to get vaccinated.
That's the biggest thing. Yeah.
It's safe and effective is the bottom line. And these companies are not interested in putting chips inside of anybody. That's not why they made this vaccine. They do want your money. So they're not for profits, but they don't work in conjunction with the government. And certainly, even if one company was in a conspiracy theory, are 5 companies in it? Like, it's just mind-boggling to me that people think that the government's trying to put chips inside of us. But anyways,
exactly.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there anything else that we should talk about? I got to a few of people's questions. I really appreciate the questions, everybody. We have to still keep masks on even if you get vaccinated. There is a small portion of people that will not mount a response. The vaccine won't work in 100% of people. So we're trying to keep them from getting the disease. But also, I think it's important to say too that the virus is just looking for hosts, and we are the host, right? And so by vaccinating yourself, you're just saying like, virus, you don't get to be inside of me anymore. And so we just need everybody to get the like, you don't get to use my body to grow more virus.
And if there's so many people with that, it'll actually have nowhere to go and it'll die out.
That's it. At the end of the day, if the virus has nowhere to live, no houses to live in, then it will die out and we will get rid of this thing. Okay, yes. I like it. That sounds like a good plan. Thank you, Sheila, for talking to me today.
My pleasure.
To everybody who tuned in. And if you give 5 people in your life, everybody, some of this information, and this information is available. You're just a doctor who really, you have access to a lot more of it, and you can understand the data set that, not everybody understands. I didn't know anything about like a fat cell. I thought that was really interesting. Like they just carve out a little fat cell and stick it in. Science is amazing, everybody. Okay. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Happy Monday.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye. My
Bye.
pleasure.